Good morning everyone, and welcome to this presentation and breakdown of the Icelandic Canyon asset pack. Now this is asset pack that I did for Unreal Engine, and I'm selling it over at the Epic FAB marketplace. So there's a link from that store that goes to this video, and the point with this video is to show you exactly what is in the asset pack. So I'm also going to do a little bit of a breakdown. I'll show you how all the shaders are set up and whatever you can expect from this pack. But the point is that there should be no surprises and that you actually get what you are buying and what you need at the moment. So with that said, let's dig into it. When you have downloaded and are starting up the asset for the first time, you will be met with this sign here. If you can't see the water demo map, load the water plugin and restart. The map will now show up in the maps folder. So the thing is that I'm using a little bit of water here. There's a stream going through. Now that doesn't show up by default, so you have to go in to the plugins and enable the water and then restart it, and then it will show up. Now the thing is that even this map is not going to show up. So if you see that this Icelandic Canyon walkthrough map does not exist, it will once you've enabled the plugin. It's something I wish could be stated a little bit clearer. But once that's done and it's up and running again, just click that, and now you will have a little bit of running water. Let's hit the play button and see what it looks like when you are walking around in the asset pack. So it's a lot of rocks and there's some foliage here and even a sculpture there in the background. So I did this last year. I was hiking over the Fimmvörðuháls trail in Iceland and came down into the valley of Thorsmörk, and there I stayed for 4 or 5 days and went out every morning to scan in this canyon here. So I got a lot of these things, and this is a sculpture that I made in clay. So I would do tutorials about all this in the future. But the thing with this is that it's a fun thing to put in. It's not animated or anything like that. It's more for reference and maybe give a little bit of a flavor to the scene. Think of it as like an object you find in a cornflakes package or something like that. It's a little bonus. So I used the drone to scan these huge cliffs here, and I can say it was an amazing experience and such a privilege to be able to be there for a few days, just fly the drone and scan these cliff faces and the winding little rivers there. Fantastic. Back in the editor, let's take a look at some of the assets here. So if I go to this rock here, all of these rocks, they come in 2 versions. So one with all the stones around it preserved, and then each rock has a version of them that's got that removed, depending on the situation where you find that most usable. I think it's kind of nice to have the surrounding rocks. It enhances a bit of realism. And then I have these river plates here with small river rocks, a couple of them, enough to make a varied riverbed scenario. And this is a river bank here. And there are also a bunch of these larger rocks. And then I have the very large cliff faces here that I scanned with the drone. There are also a bunch of trees and green foliage to scatter. So the trees are some kind of small Arctic birches. In the content sheet I have laid out all the assets for easy viewing. And you can see here which ones I have. We got the boulders down here. Let's go to those. And that's the one with the rocks surrounding it, and the same one without it. So you can easily see here what those looks like. And the little bit bigger boulders there, rocks, and the riverbed assets here. Different types of riverbed structures. Over here we have the foliage, birches, and ground cover and green plants, different variations of them. Let's go over here. You can see these fluffy clouds here. These are VDB clouds that are made in Houdini. So these volumetric clouds are still experimental in Unreal Engine. You have to enable it in order to get it to view properly. And once you've done that, you have to set up a shading network. Now I provide all that in in this package, so you don't have to think about anything. You can just place these to your heart's content wherever you need them. And back here we have the very large cliff faces that I did some scanning of as well. So I got 1, 2, 3, 4 of those. And in the background there is kind of like a template of the canyon. Let's check the settings and how everything is built up. So first of all, go to Edit Project Settings. And if you go to Maps and Modes, first of all, you can see it's set to Icelandic Canyon No Water. You can, if you want, change that to Icelandic Canyon Walkthrough. Then it will start up with the water enabled in the future. But more importantly, let's go down to Rendering. So under Rendering, you have to enable a few things. You have Enable Virtual Texture Support. You can put that on. It's not used at the moment, but it will be used in the future. So it could be good to note that that exists. But what we need to have is Lumen. We're using Lumen both as global illumination method and reflection method. And if we go down to Nanite, we're going to have to enable that. This is a Nanite only project. No LODs whatsoever in this project so far. So with that enabled as well, we can go down even further and we could enable the ambient occlusion. Now I'm not supporting ambient occlusion at the moment, but I might in the future. It's good to know that this one is here, because then I can easily add ambient occlusion map and get a little bit of that in. Now I prefer to turn motion blur off. I think it looks a lot better without the motion blur. To me it just looks like you have low FPS when you have motion blur on. It doesn't really do it for me, but this is a matter of taste, I suppose. And lastly, you got to scroll all the way down until you come to heterogeneous volumes, and you got to enable that. You can see it says experimental here. Just click that in and then you can see the volumes. There are some console commands that are useful to put in. So I actually put them all in the level blueprint. So if you open the level blueprint here, you can see there are a couple of these. Now, since they put here the level blueprint, every time you hit the play button, these will activate, and for the rest of the session they will be in effect. Now you can take these here as well and just paste them into the console command and will have the same effect. But every time you restart Unreal, you would have to do that again. In this way it sticks, but you have to hit play once in order to see it. So let's see what we have here. Well, first of all, I mentioned a little bit about the volumes before. You get the heterogeneous volumes. So in order to get those to not pop, you can get the R heterogeneous volumes max trace distance and set it to something high, in this case 50,000. Or else they might disappear after a certain distance. You got the streaming pool size. Now the default Unreal Engine streaming pool size is quite low and you will run out almost immediately, so you can increase it to 3000 or even more depending on your graphic card. And here we got R lumen screen probe gather temporal distance threshold. And you can set it to something very low, like 0.1 is low. So what that does is that sometimes when you get a lot of foliage, it will start to flicker a bit. And it can be good to, if you put this in, you will reduce the flickering quite significantly. Let's take a closer look at the objects themselves. So here I got one of my rocks here. They're all organized nicely for easy access. And I also got a naming convention here. So I got S stands for surface, Icelandic mossy rock is what kind of a thing it is, and then I got a little bit of a code there called, in this case it's called GHGA. It's an identifier because you can have lots of mossy rocks out there and you just need a way to separate them out so you can pair the textures together without going completely nuts. And then underscore it's nanite. So let's double click on this one and see how it's built. So these ones have only one texture. This is a 4K texture assigned to it. I have 4K, 2K and 1K. So you can easily swap between them. And here we have how many nanite triangles there are. So this one's got around 1 million, and that is my gold standard for all objects I make of this size. Around 1 million gets pretty much everything described, and it has very low impact on loading times and performance. So let's see how the material is built up. Let's go there. So here's that 4K material. So these are all hooked up with 2K or 1K, so you can easily drag and drop them on the object if you need to optimize a little bit. So in here, let's see. Most importantly is the texture. So I got an albedo texture, and then I got a DRF, that stands for displacement, roughness, and fuzz. So fuzz is a subsurface scattering texture, and roughness is for the reflections, and displacement is not used. I probably will replace this in the future with an ambient occlusion or something like that. Not sure. I only actually need roughness and the subsurface scattering texture. And then there is a normal. So let's take a look at the normals first. What is important, of course, is to have this one. Let's go to flip here. Just check that it's turned the right way. You get OpenGL and then you get DirectX. And this one is made in OpenGL, so you got to flip the green channel. So all of my normal maps have the flip green channel pressed in, and now it's a DirectX texture. So you got a few tabs with the things that you can tweak. So you got the albedo, and you can give this a slightly different color. Tint it a bit. And you got some albedo controls here. We can increase saturation, brightness, contrast, that kind of thing. Specular strength, make it more shiny or less shiny. Normal strength, this will boost the normal map, so it gets bumpier. And then we've got some subsurface strength here as well, so you can make the subsurface map have a greater impact, create that little glow. And you can tint the subsurface map as well to something different if you need to. And you also have more controls here. You can increase the saturation, the brightness, and the contrast as well. And if we just check down here, you can see this one goes to the master material that's called M Iceland Master. Can quickly just check how that looks like. I got a master material folder here, and everything is hooked up. See, it's kind of a simple setup. Makes it quick and easy. Let's take a look at the foliage. I got a tree here, so we can double click that and see that this one's got two materials. It got a leaf material and it's got a tillable bark material. Now when it comes to nanite trees and foliage, it's actually quite important that you press this preserve area. So what it does is that if you have problems with the nanite leaves disappearing over distance, this would do a much better job of keeping them intact. It's still not perfect. I think this is something that is being worked upon, but for now, if you want to use nanite with trees, this is the best option. It will just keep the leaves from popping away over distance. So let's go to this leaf here. And it's got the same controls as the other one, except that now it's got a art texture here. Alpha for transparency or cutout. Roughness for the roughness specular. And translucent is for the see-through effect of leaves. And you got pretty much the same tints as I've described before. And it all leads down to the M Foliage Master. And if we go here, we can also check the tiling bark texture. There. And it's got a ORT texture, so occlusion, roughness, and translucent. So there's a little bit of an occlusion here. Not that it does very much, can live without it, but it's there at least. And everything else is the same as... let's take a look at the volumes. So these ones are made in Houdini. It's VDBs exported out, and in Unreal Engine you import them as a material. So let's see here, click the Cloud Master material, and you can see it's all set up already for you, so you don't really have to think about anything. So this is all the correct setup to get you going. Let's close that down again, and you make, just like it's a normal material, you make a material instance. And once in here, the material instance, you have the possibility to do the density multiplier. So the lower the number here is, the wispier the cloud will get, more transparent. And here you are going to assign a texture. So this is then a cloud texture. So let's go to that. And these are, if I double click that, you will see this is the VDB texture that I made in Houdini. It goes into that. So you just drop that in here, and that should do it. And then you go to your outliner here, and you add a heterogeneous volume. It's this one here, and you just drag drop the material. So in this case it's the material instance cloud Ahui, and this is the CVBV, and then you can just place it in your scene as normal. So I added some displacement textures to the landscape. It's a grassy and rocky texture here. In order to get displacement to work, you need to go to your default engine.ini. Let's see here, we got this default engine.ini opened, and we're going to put in r nanite allow tessellation equals 1, r nanite dot tessellation equals 1. So that will make displacements work when you restart it. Now I think in Unreal 5.5 it's enabled by default, but in 5.4 and 5.3 it's not enabled. Then you need to put this code in. Now there are a few other things we might do in order to get this to work. If you go to your landscape, click that and type in nanite. It's a little bit tricky to find sometimes, but you just got to check that you are enabling nanite, and then hit build data. And then if you do any changes, click rebuild data, then everything should be up and running as it should be. So with that said, let's take a look at the landscape. So it's just a sculpted landscape here with textures on it. So here you can see you got some grass and some rocky textures there. As easy as that. Let's go down, and if you want more rocks, paint in the more rocks. Okay, let's go to foliage. Now I tried to name these something clever so it will be easy to find the foliage. So this one is called S ground cover common ivy var A and YHJK and nanite. So you should be able to sort it out in the filter here and just type in common ivy if you just want that, or in this case also ground cover should get all the flat low-lying plants in, and then you can use them to paint it out here as you would normally do. What updates will I be doing in the near future? So yeah, the first ones I'm thinking about is these large cliffs up here. So at the moment they're just one 4K texture, which is a little bit too low. So I'm going to introduce virtual texturing and do some UDIMs, and I'm thinking about maybe 4 UDIMs or maybe 8 UDIMs per object, per cliff. And then I want to add some wind movement to the foliage, and I want to add more displacement to the landscape material. So I want to take these rocks here and create a displacement material out of that, so we can paint it on the riverbanks. Now it's not going to be as three-dimensional as these rocks here, but it will be a good complement to be able to paint that out into the landscape material. So that's the near future. And a little bit longer term, I am returning to Iceland this summer, and I will pass by this canyon again and add a few things that I wish I had taken before. So for instance, I want to get more of these riverbanks in. I only have 2 of these pieces. I think I could do with a couple of more. And I want a few more rocks and maybe some more of these cliffs as well. And also what I want to do is get some more foliage in. So there are some specific type of plants that grow in these canyons, and I really would like to add them there as well. When I'm done with this canyon here, I'm going to continue into the Icelandic highland, and I have another area there that I'm going to be opening up for scanning. And if you're interested in that kind of stuff, then why not like and subscribe and follow this channel for updates and tutorials and breakdowns of how that is going. So I hope to see you around next time.